Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. In today's episode, we're going to be talking all about energy. What is it? How is it being used and in flow all around us? And how can you use this awareness to be more empowered in your day-to-day life? That's coming up next. Check it out. Welcome back, friends, to the Wizard Factory channel and our podcast where you explore deeper understanding of the universe and ourselves. My name is Logan Hart.
And I'm Brian Easterday.
And it's been a while. And we have a really good episode ready for you today where we're going to be talking about energy, which is a pretty big topic and I guess sounds kind of generic, but more specifically, the flow of energy. And thinking of it in terms of kind of something that you're spending of yours, it is a finite thing, and whether or not those transactions are serving you. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what we're getting into. But first things first, if you're new here, please subscribe to the channel. We would love to hit 5,000 subscribers by the end of 2021. I think that's totally possible. And let's say that is a metric of how fast that the love of truth, freedom, and sovereignty is growing, because that's essentially what you're saying when you subscribe is, I want to hear more about this, or I want to help other people see it. So like the video and help boost the video in the algorithms. And without further ado, let's get into the content. Brian, I guess I'll let you kind of get into it for a minute.
Sure. Yeah. Well, this is something that came up because, ironically enough, you and I, there was like a period where we kind of, there's like a few weeks where we didn't really necessarily have any chats, but when we talked again, we kind of noticed the same thing coming up, that we were both thinking about the same kind of lesson, just in different ways. So we decided to turn an episode, and that really is about, well, where are you putting your energy, into? Like, are you investing into yourself? Or are you just wasting energy somewhere? Or are you putting it into something that's not actually serving you and what you really want to achieve in your life? So, to start off with, like we always like to do, understand first, like as a foundational concept, that everything is a form of energy. There's always an exchange happening, if it's moving from this form to another form, or whatever it is. So these things that we're talking about are going to apply whether you're looking at it from, say, like a financial or a business perspective, and that's a really useful analogy or way to a perspective to look at this from. But it will also apply, like, in what you're spending, your focus and your time and attention on in your personal life, in your relationships, in all these different areas of life. It's something that you can apply holistically.
Universal cosmic law. And exactly, law of vibration. When you think about what energy is, well, we know that you can say the word energy in its simplest form encompasses everything in the known universe of some kind. But if you want to get more specific than that, while simultaneously keeping that true, then you can think of different energies as sort of different frequencies that of whatever form or medium or another is matter transferring these vibrations in different kinds of forms. So you could just think of it like different notes on a piano or different instruments in a band. They're different, but all kind of the same. It's all music. It's all energy, vibration. So like you said, Brian, I definitely think that thinking of everything, it may sound kind of cold, and I don't mean this literally, but in terms of a business transaction of sort. In other words, like if you go into a store, you're walking in with some kind of value. You've got some dollars in your pocket or whatever it is, but you went there looking to go home with something that you didn't walk in with. So your goal is to leave with something of more value to you than the dollars you walked in with. And so that's what it all comes down to, is energy is so if the universe is kind of the apparatus by which your consciousness is having this spiritual experience, then the energies could be looked at as maybe broad form variables that then construct the situations that tell a story, because the story of existence is just that everything that is and ever has been. But to tell a story, you have to kind of set the setting, you have to kind of bring things down and limit it to a certain point of view, essentially. And so again, to kind of tie this all together, these energies are the ways by which we're constructing how we interact with them, is how we're constructing our spiritual experience, and that is perpetuating the evolution of our awareness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good way to put it. And like again, with the looking at it from, say, like the business transaction perspective, or if you think about your energy, you imagine yourself like you have a bank account, right? Well, obviously you want more coming in, and then you want to minimize what energy is going out. And it's not just about minimizing the amount of energy that's going out, it's about the energy that does go out. Is that also serving you? You don't just want waste going. Imagine like I said, if say you had a house and your goal was to fill it up with water, right? And there's like a pipe coming in, you want as few pipes going out as possible, right? And those ones that are there, you want them to actually serve a purpose. So, but if you have more expensive and more things going out, or the way you could look at this in like a relationship would be like, if you're giving and giving and giving, and this is whether this is a friendship or a business relationship or whatever it is, if you're constantly giving, but then there's nothing coming back, well, that's how you end up in like a codependent or an unhealthy relationship, right? Just like if you treat your bank account like that, you're spending more than what you have, you end up in debt. It's an energetic debt. So these things apply anyway. And looking at it from that perspective, it's just a useful exercise to be able to summarize, like, well, is this actually something that is going to be building the future and the reality that I want? Or is this something that's actually going to be slowing me down from that, or getting in my way, or stopping me from achieving that? Because if I go by this thing that's not really something that I need, instead of taking that money and investing it into my business, well, that energy is kind of just wasted. It's a useless expense. Whereas if you were to put that back into your business, well, all of a sudden that's going to help you create more energy flow. So, you're adding more in as well as minimizing what's going out. And this is the same thing in your relationships. You think about it like, an emotional bank account. You want to be filling up that relationship with good experiences, and then you want to be minimizing any bad ones. But if you have an account it's constantly in emotional debt in that relationship, because all the negative experiences are so constant that it outweighs the good ones, well, all of a sudden that's where those relationships become very unhealthy, and those are the ones that end up failing, right? We've all had some experience with that, I'm sure at some point in our lives. And you can take this and apply it to so many different situations, but it's a really useful perspective to look at and actually ask yourself, what am I actually doing with the time and the energy that I have available to me?
Yeah, man, a lot of stuff hit me. It just goes so deep, you know what I mean? And so like, we hear so much about balance, yin and yang, but what are you balancing? Energy, right? But not just energy like dust particles floating out in space. I'm talking about actual energy that is flowing through you. It's tangible, it's physical, it's real. That's what you're balancing. And so in a relationship, that energy is what you're balancing there. When things get out of balance, it's because the flows of energy are not properly mutually serving.
Mhm.
It's like if one person was making all the money and putting it into the account, and instead of the other person, you know, working and reaping rewards and putting that into that same account, they're just out spending it. And so
Mhm.
this other person is constantly just putting their energy to something that has a hole in the bottom.
Right.
You'll never fill it up. It
Right.
cannot happen. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is taking it back to that business transaction. Ironically, I realized why it may sound cold to some people if you have a wounded perspective on what business and money and things like that actually is. And so you're going to project that onto, oh, business is an icky word. No, like, okay, you're probably thinking of a Wall Street guy, some asshole that's just out to exploit everybody. So if you're going to talk about a business transaction, I'm not necessarily saying, business is a good or a bad thing. It can take a positive or a negative form, a beneficial or a toxic one. So the way that I think you can use to differentiate the two is the intention to be parasitic or symbiotic with those that you're transacting with. What it comes down to is everyone at the end of the day is looking to benefit themselves, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. The real question is, are you including the benefit of others in your thought process? That's the only, it's an addition to, not a replacement. That's where people get caught up. They're either like, oh, money bad, like I'm just going to live like a monk and shun nice things because I see them as like less godly or not spiritual, or they're just in that total greedy pig mindset of just like take, fuck everybody. They're just a mosquito walking around, flying around, sucking off of people. So that's really what it comes down to, is, are you engaging in parasitic or symbiotic relationships? And that includes not only yourself, but those you're interacting with. You should be asking this of every person, yourself and everyone else that you're interacting with.
Right. And I think a great way to tell whether or not an interaction or an energy exchange of any kind is like symbiotic or parasitic is a symbiotic relationship. You'll be able to observe the law of Gabo.
Mm.
You'll be able to see that and if you're not familiar with that, be sure to check out our rune series that we did where we talk about the runes, and one of the runes is Gabo, which is all about mutual exchange. And that's what you see in a symbiotic relationship. Where in a parasitic relationship, what you see is there's a host and then a parasite, and then they're just feeding off of that and draining it.
Mm.
So you those will really be a foundational framework of whether or not that relationship, that interaction, whatever kind of energetic exchange it is a healthy or an unhealthy one.
Mm.
Will be based off of that. And those are definitely two things to always observe when you're looking at, is this thing something I should be giving my energy into? Well, obviously, if you see, you know, uh, if there's something that say you've been putting like a bunch of money into it, but then there's never like a payout. Well, obviously that's not like a business you want to then keep investing into, right?
Mm.
Because it's not working. Or if there, you can apply this to anything. Like I said, relationships, if you keep giving and giving and giving, but you never see any kind of a return,
Mm.
well, you can't do that, because eventually you'll drain yourself, and you can get to the point that you can't give away something you don't have. And some people have managed their energy, even their emotional, their psychological energy, so poorly that they feel so drained and so depleted that they don't even know where to start, that they can't give anything away because they've spent their whole life in a codependent kind of a place where they're constantly giving away their finances, giving away their emotional energy, or whatever it is, but not being clear on like what they're wanting out of it.
Mm.
So then they end up totally drained. This is where like depression and these kind of things kick in, and then it just kind of becomes this vicious cycle. But when you start learning how to actually, like for me, this was a really big step of me kind of getting out of depression, or the kind of the mental health issues I had when I was younger, was starting to learn how to like take my energy back. like, okay, instead of focusing on just like how pissed off I am about this, I'm going to start thinking about like, well, what can I actually do to learn from that situation?
Mm.
Right. So, you could be looking at the same situation through two different lenses. One can be a very, where you're almost you're parasitic on your own energy, right? You're just giving it away. Well, you're not learning anything. You're just feeding into the victim story of, oh, this person did this to me, that, or whatever it is. Or you can look at it from like a warrior mindset, which is where, okay, I went through this situation, but what can I learn from it? How can I actually move forward with this?
Mm-hmm.
So both are energy exchanges. It's just one, you're going to be gaining knowledge and wisdom and awareness from it. And the other, you're going to just be continuing to give away your energy. And the only thing you're gaining is a continuation of that victimhood cycle or whatever
Exactly.
it is.
Because one way to put that is that parasitic relationships can either be voluntary or involuntary.
Mhm.
Because say, if some hacker like just straight up steals the money out of your bank account and you've never even met this person, well, obviously
Right.
you didn't even know about it, much less could consent to it.
Mhm.
Versus if you're in a business relationship with somebody for 10 years and they've consistently lied and stolen from you and been shady,
Right.
and you still are just complaining about it, it is a voluntary parasitic relationship because you are continuing to still give your energy to that thing which is not
Right.
respecting it or you.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So again, when you're looking at energy with a very kind of broad spectrum, you can see how it kind of starts tying things together in terms of just this parasitic versus symbiotic dynamic that we're engaging in, whether it's with other people or, activities, say like addictions or, entertainment or things like that. You're giving your energy to those things, even though they're actually feeding off of you, ironically. But those behaviors are coming from that place of automatic deficit internally.
Mhm.
So to me, that helps me understand addiction a lot better because people just see the behavior, they see the self-destruction, but they don't see what's driving that. Why
Mhm.
people wake up and one day and jam a needle in their arm or whatever. It's not because they just think it sounds cool. It's because as bad as that is, the alternative to them is worse. That they're, so like that's really what it comes down to. If you're looking at it in terms of their, say if somebody needs to victimize someone else in order to feed that energy that they don't have, so they go out and rape or rob somebody, that is a form of, I think, parasitism, because it's not about it, like the act itself, as much as it's an energy exchange. That person is going out and satisfying this dark energetic need for themselves at what, the expense of someone else.
Mhm.
That's verbatim what that is. So
Right. Like I said, a good question to always ask yourself is, well, what in every situation, whether it's an emotional, one, or, something like I said, you're actually dealing with a business or whatever it may be, is, what are you giving your energy to? What am I spending my time on? What are you paying attention to? Because you ultimately, you only have so much time. So if there are certain goals or things that you're wanting to achieve in life, the best way to get about or to go about achieving those is by being able to have the resources to do that. And the way you build those is by being conscious and aware of how are you uh, bringing in energy, but as well as like how are you spending it? Where's your waste? Because that's really, I think, more than anything else, even bringing it in is seeing where your waste is. Where the and for example, say you wanted, you're studying to get a degree or something like that, right?
mm-hmm.
But then you're just sitting around watching Netflix all day. Well, is that going to actually help you study and achieve that degree you want? Or was all that time and attention that you gave to something else wasted energy that could have been applied towards achieving that goal?
Right.
So these are the questions that we have to ask ourselves, and those same things that can come into a relationship. Definitely in like my past relationship, there was a point I really had to realize and say like, hey, I can't keep giving and giving and giving like this because it is not working. And then I had to realize, okay, so this is actually a very unhealthy. This is kind of like a parasitic relationship, and I need to get out of it because it's codependent. And then there were a lot of different steps I had to take in order to get to that healthy place. Which is very different than being in a healthy relationship where there is that equal exchange. And so what we want and what we create, we very much are responsible for. That's what it ultimately comes down to, because you have the choice of whether or not uh, you want to be continue feeding your energy into this, or into that, whatever it is. But the choice is ultimately yours.
Right. Absolutely. One way you could look at it kind of is, we've probably all heard this, emotion is energy in motion. So if you're looking at it like that, it's really all about care. That care, what you care about, you will feed your energy and time and attention to. So essentially, you can say you care about something, say the degree, but if you're spending more time watching the Netflix and not studying for the degree, then you can say whatever you want, but how you're spending your energy is really what is determining, or not even determining, but just is a true metric of that, what you actually care about. And
Right.
so that's the question you have to ask yourself. I know it sounds so simple, but when you're complaining about, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with complaining in general, but if you're complaining about the same thing for a long time, for example, and it either you're not willing to change it or you're unable to change it, say like a barking dog at the neighbor, you're not going to go shoot the neighbor's dog. You're just going to have to fucking deal with it, right? So at some point, in order to keep your sanity, you literally have to just decide, I don't care enough to care anymore about that. I don't, it's not worth my energy. I've spent enough time giving that, feeding that. You know what I mean? And so like the irony is it's the thing that you actually hate and are focusing on that you're still, I'm not going to say your feeding is in just by you thinking about the dog, that's going to make the dog bark worse. I'm not saying that, but the irony is that thing which you say you despise, you are still showing in action that's what you care about, because you keep giving it your energy, your attention.
Right.
That seems like a perfect segue into the, like essentially identifying distractions. And, like, so you can say the dog is a distraction, but are you really more distracted by the barking itself? Or are you stopping what you're doing to fucking bitch or yell at the dog or whatever? Like, which of those two things is more of a distraction? Which is taking more energy from you? That's what you need to be asking. Like identifying maybe something you think is a solution or you keep saying is a solution is actually a distraction. In other words, if it may be a problem, but it's not the problem that's actually the root of your problems, but you're focusing on some peripheral thing and saying, well, no, like I need to do this. Yeah, you're technically right, but you're also distracting yourself from the thing you really don't want to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's excellent. And there's so many different things that can actually be a distraction, or something that so anything that isn't a solution. For example, like staying stuck in the victimhood mindset. That is a self-perpetuating cycle that just feeds and snowballs on itself, till it becomes like radically out of control, and then a person can get to the point that they literally feel like they have zero control over their life at all, and then they hate it. But it's because they've allowed that. Like ultimately, like we are all in control whether or not we realize it. It's just like, are you focusing on things that are distracting you and keeping you from achieving your goal, or is it something that is a solution to help you on the way to achieving your goal? no matter what that goal is.
Yeah, it can come in many, many forms. Victim mindset, like you said. What about blaming other people?
Right.
Gossiping, even if it
Hmm.
has nothing to do with you. If you're giving more energy to people you've never even met, some celebrity or somebody in your town, then you're showing that sorry. What I'm saying is, if you're giving more energy to those things, it's not that it's wrong to ever gossip or complain or any of that. It's that if you're spending more energy doing those things than actually taking action and changing, or changing your situation or changing something about it, maybe your mindset or whatever, then that is a telltale sign.
Right. Well, and that's, I guess another good way to look at this would be like the difference between like something that's an asset and something that's a liability,
Mm,
right? That liability has the potential to cost you energetically. Whereas,
exactly.
an asset's something that it actually has a value for you. Like, it's solid.
Just a quick comment, because it kind of invokes this idea of, you talk about becoming the internal king, like that archetype of being an internal king. But on the side, you also need this internal lawyer to be checking for liabilities and assessing,
Right.
and mitigating those.
Right. No, I mean, yeah, because it's true. Because, yeah, anything that, say, if you're wanting to achieve a goal, well, anything that is keeping you from doing that, whether it's like the amount of energy you're spending on something or focus that you're giving into, those are things that can then become liabilities because they're not actually, helping you feed into your goal.
Right. Yeah. Like, even say, take getting a new dog or something like that. Like, you could say, "Oh, I'm unhappy. I'll get a new dog." Well, sure, having a pet companion can definitely lift the spirits and make you feel less alone. But at the same time, if you're doing that because you're surrounding yourself with another thing that needs something from you, that gives you this kind of outlet to distract yourself from what's making you unhappy. You see how it's not the thing itself, it's what's going on in your mental state, mentalism.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because this all ties back to cosmic law, as with
Mhm.
everything. What we're looking at here is just cause and effect. You can look at, hey, if I do this and then I end up, if I keep spending money on this drug addiction, well, I'm going to end up, broke and addicted and probably in a really poor place, right? Whereas if you were to take that money and invest it into your future and do that, what are you going to do? You're going to create a better future for yourself.
Mhm.
So, like that's all coming down to the principle of mentalism. It's all coming down to cosmic law and, our understanding of cause and effect. It's
Man.
really simple to observe that.
Yeah, exactly. And take like that example of the junkie again. There's really something to that there, because they're not wrong for being wounded. They're not wrong for needing something to just, I don't know, like, take them out of the hell that they live. They're wrong for reaching for something that isn't a solution.
Hmm.
You
Right. It's
take
a
that same
distraction.
energy that's driving you insane, that you can't cope with, you literally can't live with, and you put it into something you invest it into yourself,
Hmm.
that's going to serve you, and be a solution rather than a crutch and a ball and chain on your leg.
Yeah.
And that's how you get stuck in that victim. It's not about it's not wrong for being miserable. It's wrong for reaching for something that isn't going to change it, that's going to actually perpetuate and keep you crippled.
Right. Yeah, because it's something that is definitely, yeah, a liability. There's so much that can go with that
Right.
you could see with that metaphor. But and this is leads into the point of one of the things you can really ask yourself is like, are you choosing to invest in yourself or are you constantly always investing in others?
Hmm.
And it's not that investing in others is about, for example, like with my son, I invest time and attention and money and all sorts of stuff for him because he's my son. I want that.
Hmm.
I'm choosing to do that. But at the same time, if I was constantly giving and giving and giving, and I never took any time to work on my projects or to just like do the things that I need to do in life, I would just end up completely drained and stressed out. And then I wouldn't be able to be
Yeah.
the best father I could because I'm constantly giving away. So
It's still just a balance. It's
it's
not
just a
either
balance
or.
thing, you know. But even then, I think a choice that you can kind of always ask yourself, like when you're going to spend energy, whether it's attention or for example, like with finances, one of the things that over the last few years, I've really uh, made up my mind about is, how much I didn't want to be paying rent to someone, and then it just going away. That I was very insistent on being able to, like, if I was spending money, I was going to be buying my own property. I was going to be investing that into myself. Because you could look at it, say your rent's 600 a month or whatever that number is. If you're paying it to a landlord, well, once that is spent, it's gone. You get that month, you get that little bit of usage out of it. It's limited, and then it's gone. You don't get to use that again. Whereas, say, if you were spending that same amount buying your own property, investing into yourself, or taking that same amount of money and putting it into say you're buying fruit trees for your property or whatever it is, those are all, you're taking that same amount of energy and you're just choosing where you're spending it. So as long as you want to be building, if you're building your reality and wanting to take control of your life, well, that's a really great place to start. I mean, for everybody, because everybody has to have a place to live, right? Well, why wouldn't you be trying to choose to invest in yourself versus choosing, to constantly give that to others? Because then you're really you're getting the bare minimum amount of reward out of the energy you're spending. It's like with the grocery store example used earlier, Logan. It's like if you're going in there, uh, and instead of buying a bunch of food that you could then take and you get a good deal on and you can make a bunch of meals out of that. You just go and buy like one item that's like way overpriced,
Like a $50 piece of lobster.
like a
something.
$50, whatever it is, like some stupid little thing, like a pizza, whatever you want to imagine it is. But would you feel like you really got a good deal that if you went into the grocery store and you spent $50 on a pizza and that was all you got? No, that would have seemed like a waste of energy. Well, you can look at that same thing, and then that same thing applies to, in a relationship as well. you know are you putting energy into a relationship, no matter what kind of relationship it is this actually going to help you create the reality you want and have the experience that you want in this life? Or is it something that's going to, like, you're giving away so much energy that you're actually helping create someone else's reality, that you're going along with them and co-signing their things? I know that was definitely something in one of the unhealthy relationships I had in the past. I was giving so much myself that, like, it almost like co-signed and went into the reality the other person has, that their projection and everything that they're living into, you're constantly feeding that in, feeding into that every time you co-sign one of their victimhood things or whatever it is. And then before you know it, you're living in a reality that you didn't even want to, that it's not yours, it's someone else's, and you're so tied up in it that you're like, well, man, how do I even get my energy back to start creating my own life again? Like whenever I got out of that relationship, I literally like started from scratch. Like I had to start over. Like I had, the vehicle, I had, you know, I had given it away, but not thinking about it. This is a great example. Yeah, I had a vehicle totally owned. And then for what, she didn't have a vehicle and said she needed one, so I gave her mine. Right. But where that, it left me without a vehicle. And then, she,
And you never got it back.
And I never got it back. And I wasn't even allowed to take it down the street to go to the gas station or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I put myself in that situation. I was choosing to get my energy into that instead of saying that, like, no, this is my vehicle. I bought this. If you need one, you're going to have to figure out how to get your own.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I had to start from scratch. The same thing with the house and I lost pretty much everything and just started from over that. But that's because I allowed myself to get into that situation. And I had to start asking myself, how do I take my energy back in order to get my life back in order? And it was, as you know, Logan, it was quite the process. Still in that process,
Yeah. Absolutely. Because as long as you're co-signing that, then you're perpetuating the learned helplessness that is
Yep.
coming out of that victimhood.
There you go.
That I always think of that meme. It's one of my favorite memes where the dude's riding the bicycle. It's like a comic, and he sticks the stick in his front, and then he falls over, and then he blames something else. He's like, "Fucking whatever," fuck
Right.
the government or fucking Trump. People always trying to find something else to blame, but yeah, ultimately, you have power, whether you like it or not. You have a life force. That's what that is. Like the dark crystal, where they're siphoning off their essence, their literal life force. That's what you're giving away. And like ultimately, it is what it is. So at all times, you're either using that energy for or against yourself, and no one can ever take that responsibility away from you. So don't bother trying to give it to anyone. It's yours. Own it. Use it. Okay, because that's actually your power. That's your sovereignty.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And for those who, haven't seen it, we did a great breakdown on the Dark Crystal series too, so check that out as well.
By the way, too, guys, just a quick mention, if y'all haven't checked out the Patreon yet, definitely go do that, because we've really put a lot of value into that, and people are really liking that so far. Brian, you'd mentioned something about how the system kind of being designed to keep people in survival mode really plays into this dynamic we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you think about it, just even energetically, or just even from the financial perspective, we can very much see the system, especially here in the West, is it really is designed to keep people in a place of like just living paycheck to paycheck, or constantly stuck in a state of fear, constantly stuck in this kind of survival state. And the reason they are kept there is because they don't understand at a fundamental level energy management, whether that's their time and attention, but that time and attention then translates into finances. Whether it's like, oh, is this a distraction? Is this liability? People aren't actually looking at these things and asking themselves these questions. So what income they do end up getting, they end up just completely spending, or it's gone, or because they chose to get this loan or get that, and then they have all these bills that have stacked up. And it keeps people stuck in this cycle. Whereas if you learn proper energy management, not only will you have, your finances will probably get in better order, but you will have more time in your life to pay attention to the things that you really care about, that you really value. And when you have that time and you have those resources, you then have freedom in your life. You can choose to go study. You can choose to do this project. You can actually start to make choices and moves as creating in the world, versus just being another cog in the machine that can't leave, because it doesn't have the ability to go anywhere else. So, and that all really comes down to fundamental the principle mentalism. Are you just living life without even realizing where you're putting your time and your attention and your energy? Or are you consciously choosing to use that with awareness in order to achieve the goal that you want?
Absolutely. Invest in yourself, and you'll have the resources to achieve the freedom that you want. And now, what better time than now, dude? Look at the state of the world.
Right.
Investing in yourself doesn't just mean like buying a trust or something like that. It means grow a garden in your backyard. Start fermenting vegetables. Figure out a way to collect rainwater. That is investing in yourself far more than what you probably think of. And if you're going to do something financial, invest in something that's going to grow in value, like cryptocurrency. That's what I'm choosing to invest my money in, and it's paying off very well. So there's just no excuses anymore, dude.
Right.
YouTube alone, as ironic as it is that they're this colossal icon of censorship and freedom of speech stifling and all of that, that's the best place to learn how to grow your own food and beat the freaking system. That's beautiful. Use
Yeah.
it. It's free.
Well, and that's a great,
There's
I
no
like
more
that.
excuses.
Yeah. I like that you brought that point up because it's definitely something I've been thinking about is the difference between, perceived security, value and security and imagined value and security.
Mhm.
For example, like you might have an investment or something, but it's something that, it's not a guaranteed thing. It could go up, it could go down, whatever that may be. So that's something that it's good to have. It's not that that's wrong, but you also have to understand that it may have a volatile nature. Whereas like one of the goals I'm focusing on, like with my land, for example, is building like a permaculture forest, building, an, an all organic, or a natural swimming pool, for water collection, adding swales and all these different things, because that actually, to me, that is real security of knowing that I can collect water in order to have a self-sustaining system, that this forest that I plant will only get better and better and better, and I'll have to do less and less maintenance on it as it goes along, but I'll be able to pull more reward from it.
Mhm.
So that, to me, that's a real security. That's something. So that, I think when you're spending your energy or you have goals, that's another question to ask yourself. Is this something that is just a perceived value or perceived wealth, but there's a potential to lose it at some point? Or is this actual real security? Is this some kind of long-term stability that I can have that I know as it gets better? Like with my food forest example, that not only will that get better throughout my life, but as I pass that on to my children, that'll be something that gets better for them. It's something that will only continue to grow and get better and better, and not just as for us, but it will, it's going to increase, the organic matter in the soil. So that'll
Mhm.
increase the water retention. So that'll bring in more species, more plant variety. Whether it's plants, animals, you start to build this little ecosystem, and instead of going, you may go from a place that was this place that was barren and had nothing on it to all of a sudden this place that's really quite beautiful.
Mhm.
And it's a great example of like, okay, if I wasn't doing that, I could just be going and buying, instead of buying trees, I could just be buying the fruit from the grocery store, right? Well, yeah, I'm still getting that. I'm still getting something from it, but is it a long-term value? Is it real security? It may give me food in the moment, but is it going to give me food over and over and over again? So you have to start thinking about things like that and bringing in that long-term, that kind of Saturnian perspective into things, and really setting yourself up to where you have actual stability and security. And then once you have that, well, all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier to then expand from there, to
Mhm.
make more ventures because you have that solid foundation to build off of.
And let us know what your solutions are. Leave us a
Absolutely.
comments. Where's our gardeners at?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Where's my permaculture advocates? Because, to me, I think that's one of the best solutions we could all be focusing on is putting that energy back into the earth. That's a bank, that's an account that we all have to draw from. So we need to be
Yeah.
putting something back into it,
Ooh,
right?
that's a good one. That's a good one. So ultimately, we can kind of tie it all together by saying, like, really just look at what energy truly is everywhere, at all times, constantly in motion, ebbing and flowing, and interacting with you and your consciousness. And that's happening regardless. So bring your awareness to it, tap into that, and start being your own lawyer, being your own banker, determining what isn't a good business transaction. You know what I mean? The flow of currency is along the river banks. Like you
Mhm.
have to guide and flow that energy like an empowered wizard, for lack of a better word. Here we
Right.
are at the wizard factory. Let's be some wizards.
Mhm.
So, and by the way, speaking of wizards, check out our initiation package. It's a free mini course that we made. Plus, it gives you access to our Facebook closed private group. So, click that link in the description.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, again, in the comments, I definitely want to hear from you guys. What are, you know, tell me, what are some areas that you see, like maybe as humanity, what is a liability? What's an area where we're maybe
Mm.
wasting our energy as a humanity? And then what is your solution for that problem? Let's get some discussion going in the comments with that. But yeah, I think that's going to be kind of a good wrap here. So, again, like Logan mentioned, check out that initiation package, check out the Patreon, a lot of
Check
stuff.
out our website, thewizardfactory.com, all of our products and services on there, everything more about us and who we are, what we're working on.
Absolutely. Yeah. And with lots of great stuff going on that's getting ready to come out. So keep an eye out for all that. And
Sorry. Yeah, one more thing too. Quick shout out to all of our patrons as well. We just want to, thank you guys for helping to support us. It really does help, and we're the more that is growing, the more that we can really show up and provide even more value in higher quality ways via this channel, which is really something that we want to do. So again, thank you. That really, really does help.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's going to wrap this one up for this episode. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Be sure to like, subscribe, share it around if you found it valuable. And until next time, be empowered, be inspired, be encouraged.
Booyah!